We go now to chapter 4 about the presentation, analysis, and interpretation of data. All right, what about chapter 4? This part of the research report and presents the findings and the discussions regarding them. The presentation and analysis are integrated with the interpretation and discussion. It should be remembered that the discussion are always data-based. Do not forget this one. It should be data-based. Opinions or anything that is out of data content are not allowed. Tables are used to add clarity of the presentation of the findings in a very clear and logical term. Keep tables relevant. Do not use it as an ornament. Tables are numbered and titled. Always remember to follow the format of your institution. You could check the library of your institution and try to look for unpublished research or manuscript, thesis, and dissertation. Or maybe you could directly ask the institution for their format in writing thesis and dissertation. So here is a sample table, a descriptive table. You could see there table number. So in this example, that is table 2. And then of course, the title of the table, the frequency distribution of the overall level of performance on mental ability. This is aligned with the research question or statement of the problem in chapter 1. So on the table itself, you could see data there. So for this example, frequency and percentage are presented in this table. Then another example of table, a descriptive one again, okay, are the data are actually here presented, like the variables. We have grit here, autonomy, competence, relatedness, psychological well-being. So for this table, its variable presented the mean and the standard deviation. Again, follow the format of your institution. So here it seems that that's overall mean. The 3.5 is an overall mean of the grit. But in some format, indicators are being presented, and this will reflect as a summary. So it's really important to check the format of your institution, right? But one thing is clear here, this is a table which presents, okay, this is a table that presents a descriptive one because we have mean, the description of that mean, and the standard deviation. So another table, another sample table is an inferential table. So still, the table number and the title are indicated there. And if you could see two variables under the first column are being tested inferentially, and based on the presentation, it seems that it's a manual computation because it's a computed value against the tabular value. But anyway, this is an example of inferential table. When we say inference, we use inferential statistics. We could use a test of relationship, test of difference. We could have a regression or prediction depending on the problem or what inferential problem is stated on the statement of the problem, which was indicated or presented or discussed in chapter 1. Then this is a sample table from a qualitative research. Some qualitative research are doing it also in a tabular form. And so we could see there, okay, the table number and the title. So in this case, they are in same line. The previous examples, we have the table number on top, followed by the title. Yeah. So here, no, the emerging themes are presented and selected transcript as well. So the P3 there represent participant 3, participant 4, and then participant 7. That's the meaning of it. No, you could have it in your discussion as well in the methodology, in the manner of presentation of your table. Okay. So another example, some qualitative research format, they are not using table. Okay. They presented the findings, they presented the results thematically. So in this case, in this example, so theme 1 first, and then discussion about the results. So again, no, in qualitative research, some are using table or they are doing tabular form. Some are thematically presented in the way they present the results. Okay. So what are the things to consider in the presentation, analysis, and interpretation of the data? Okay. First, yan, we need to explain literally what's in the presentation. Again, based on the data, based on the table on the data, based on the presentation, explain it literally. Okay? We're discussing conventional thesis format. We're not discussing IMRAD format. So, it's when it comes to details, conventional format is very detailed compared to the IMRAD format. Okay? Then of course, presentation should be sequential based on the statement of the problem. So, statement of the problem 1 should be answered or the result presented that will be presented should be number 1 first. So they should be aligned. No? When it asks about demographic profile, so if that is the statement of the problem, in the presentation of the results or findings, it should be, the first table should be the demographic profile, or it should be the first presentation, regardless if we will do it on a tabular form or not, depending on the format. Okay. And then of course we need to have an explanation that could be understood by lay people, because on the table, maybe on the results presentation, it is something technical that people in different profession or disciplines could easily understand that, but in other profession, it will hard for them to grasp the explanation. So you could you could support it with an explanation that could be easily understood. Okay? And then, of course, always support it with an interview to validate the data that you are presenting. They should, no, that data should be a reflection of the participants or informants or respondents' thoughts, idea as well on that particular findings. All right, so you need to support it with an interview. And then, of course, support it with the literature. The literature could be something that really validates your findings or the result, or maybe something that is contradictory to your findings. Okay? Again, this is in conventional format uh, writing. We go now to chapter 5, summary and conclusion, or summary, conclusions, and recommendation. Right. So, what about chapter 5? Okay. The summary put together the highlights of the important findings. It's a summary. Okay. And then findings should be tie up with the problem stated in the first chapter. And then of course, the conclusion is the abstraction of the summary of findings. And the recommendation allow the researcher some free thinking for as long as it shows relevance to the problem of findings. Do not forget this, because chapter 5 will revolves with these key concepts. Okay? And then when we talk about findings, always remember that is something in the past. That's why it's findings, no? So you can include numbers when we talk about the findings. When we talk about the conclusion, we're talking about the present, no? So you have your findings, and how you will conclude from the findings. So the discussion should be in the present tense, and no numbers are needed. Okay? Because that is a conclusion, not anymore findings. Okay? And then for the recommendation, okay, it is something that the concern is about future, or maybe in a future tense. Okay, so that is recommendation, no numbers again, because these are the common errors in writing the conventional thesis or research or dissertations. Again, the findings should be in the past, conclusion should be in the present, so no number for the conclusion, and same as well with the recommendation. So, this is an example introduction for summary, conclusion, and recommendation. Okay, so you need to have an introductory sentence or paragraph discussing chapter 5. Notice also, if you could notice, no, that part of the summary there is number 1, which is tied up in the problem stated in the first chapter. So that is sequential. Another example of sample summary of findings from a qualitative research. Okay, so you could see it there. No? So started from question number 1. In the summary of the answer, or the summary of the results are there uh, being discussed. Okay. And then this is actually a sample of a conclusion also. Again, no, the finding should be aligned with the results, or with what you found out if you're the researcher in chapter 4. And then the conclusion should be aligned with the findings. You could also observe there that no numbers are being discussed in the conclusions, okay, or in conclusion. So then we go now to another example, okay, which is a recommendation. Okay, so this is an example of a a recommendation. So we need to remember the following or to consider the following in writing our chapter 5. Okay? But again, I always mention this, no, depending on the format of institution, because in some institution they only have 4 chapters, so this will be chapter 4. But regardless, the content is the same because in some schools, chapter 1 and 2, problem and background, then chapter 2, review of related studies and literature, they are integrated. Okay, in some format they are separated. So what we're discussing here is the assumption that the literature and the problem background, they are have different chapter. Okay, what are the things that you needed to consider in writing chapter 5? Okay, okay. Finding for each research question should be summarized separately. Okay, you can't summarize it like a synthesis, no, that's different. Okay, although in chapter 2 we have a synthesis of literature. Okay, for chapter 5 or summary of findings, you still need to separate those question in summarizing. So each statement of the problem should have a summarized answer, okay, or summarized findings. Okay, okay, don't forget this one also. Conclusions are inferences based on the result of the study and, okay, must be clearly linked to the findings. So the findings is anchored on the results, and then the conclusion should be linked to the findings. Okay? Then third, okay, recommendations may include suggestion. May include, no? Possibly include, depending on what you found out, okay? So, for change in policy or practice based on the findings of the study and may include recommendation for further study. That's why we don't stop researching or writing researches because based on our findings, there are gaps that possibly emerge or we were not able to address. Okay, so that's all about chapter 5. Okay, thank you so much. So here are the references.